What's going on, creators? Yeah, just want to get on here and bring everybody back to now. Appreciate y'all being here and vibing with me for a bit. Yeah, today I'd like to talk a little bit about feelings and how the spiritual battle is always in the present moment. So I want to kind of shift away from this spell of the theys coming in the future when it's already happened. This everything is a battle to stay at rest in the present moment, and so either you're spinning out in fear in the present moment or you're not. So it's really important to start embodying these states of consciousness, the feelings of already achieving these different desires now. And it's always about expanding that in the present moment. If you're not doing that in the present moment, a lot of times you're just unconsciously drifting into patterns of fear. You may feel the fear, the feeling of that first, but then you might start telling yourself all these different stories of why you should be afraid and how that's a benefit to you for some reason. But ultimately, all those are illusions that you start to feel and experience to be illusions as you face the different fears, especially when you're just in a state of trying to embody the feeling of whatever you want to achieve. So say you feel a lack of maybe prosperity. And I think it's important that we all start feeling wealthy and abundant and expressing that, because scarcity is such a trick for one, not real for two. And as you start to embody the state of wealth or abundance, now what starts to happen is then self is always being externalized. It's always your assumptions about who you believe yourself to be, your faith, ultimately, your relationship with God is always being externalized in your relationships, your jobs, your interactions with people, your life situations and circumstances, all these events that are happening for you, not to you. But once you realize that, oh, well, a lot of my physical scarcity is based on maybe not feeling worthy or feeling guilty, and then you're getting a lot of that reflected back to you. Maybe you feel guilty, and you're getting a lot of punishment type circumstances and events. It's like you keep getting the raw end of the karma deal, and once you start to recognize that pattern, though, how so much of our situations in life and our desires either not being fulfilled or being fulfilled are based on our inner beliefs about whether we can deserve it or any of these types of things. You can start to put on those states of consciousness now, and anything that pops up that tries to pull you away from that, you can start to identify as fear or limiting beliefs that are preventing you from maybe experiencing bliss right now, because it's always a battle to stay at rest. It's not coming in the future. It's either you're in a state of fear now or you're not in a state of fear. There's no you're a little bit pregnant. It's like one or the other. And so realizing that, part of the practice of putting on the desired outcome first is identifying what you want to feel. A lot of times the mind, when you're in a state of fear, will show you what you're not. Maybe you feel some scarcity. Well, for just right now, how would you feel? Put on that total freedom. Let's say you won the Powerball, or some lottery or something. The feeling that you're trying to attain by this external material thing. Put on that feeling of abundance. How would you feel, if you looked at your bank account and you had just unlimited means or financial resources, with a business, it's maybe easier to start to visualize that as just a thriving business that's providing a lot of value for your community. How would that make you feel if you didn't have to be so hands-on, if you could create this and kind of walk away and then, still be able to drink from the current of that, embody that. It's like if you were maybe not used to any of that, maybe your only taste of that is maybe a 1-week vacation a year. Put that on. Put yourself in a state of being in vacation, the emotion, the feeling of that. And just expand that more and more so. And as you're doing that, a lot of times you'll get these resistant patterns that start to emerge. And you can start to identify those as the blocks to let go of, so that you can experience maybe bliss to the furthest extent that you can, because you start to realize how pointless the fear is, how it's just limiting you and it's putting you in this little box and it's not helping. if you can't embody the promises that God's already said that are yours, that you can be, do, or have anything, with Christ, and by believing these promises, that whatever you ask for, believe that you received it and it's yours, embody that, now. And as you do, start to realize, as like Neville Goddard would describe, like the feeling is the secret. That's what the soul's after. Ask yourself in this present moment, because this is when you do it, is right now. And so start asking yourself, what do I want to feel right now? And then feel it. Just put yourself in imagination in that of already attaining it, and just vibe in that space for as long as you can. Expand it, really put it on full throttle. Don't limit yourself. Put it on, and then don't start to put on like these mental diets that just take away from that. It's like, oh, I've been feeling so much peace today and bliss and abundance, and I know it's just a matter of God's timing that they'll soon start to reflect in my life as those seeds start to be the harvest that I'm reaping in the present moment, in the day. The things I planted yesterday in consciousness didn't just disappear into oblivion, but they're going to confront me in the present moment more and more so as I'm becoming aware of that pattern. And so it's like, it doesn't really matter when it starts to reflect. Just know that it will. It's just inevitable, because in the past, in the old man, it was always just doing that with fear and creating fearful scenarios and undesirable outcomes that you're being confronted with all the time. And so it's like, well, what would you rather like? That you unconsciously are creating these things and just having to deal with it, realizing that it could be totally different based on if I just stop reacting and feeling the emotions of fear and stress and anxiety and like wrath, all of these like negatives that are basically negatives because they imply beliefs in separation, which is not real. But once you start to embody more of the oneness, and you start seeing how your consciousness and your connection with God is being externalized as like as a big mirror, well, then you can instantly start to shift, like, oh, well, this is just a reflection of my fear, so it's pointless to have this fear. This is all it's doing is creating unnecessary suffering and torment that I'm experiencing in the present moment. It's always in the present moment. It's never, oh, I'm experiencing this thing tomorrow. No, you're being tormented now. I mean, it's like, so you can either choose to stop tormenting yourself, because it really boils down to, are you going to continuously punish yourself? That's what it is. You're punishing yourself. Maybe your feelings of guilt are causing you to do that, but start to work on these things with God, and if you're having struggles with it, if you're having a hard time with like embodying, maybe feeling innocent, being worthy or deserving of love and being treated with respect. Someone put a comment on one of my videos the other day. It was about putting up boundaries, and you can really take that to a full extreme, because it's like you're putting the boundary between you and another, but you're also putting the boundary within. As you set these limits on what you're willing to tolerate, it's like, are you tolerating just a bunch of fear and unconscious just thought patterns that are emerging from being in that state, and just allowing it? Or are you going to say, this is, if I'm going to have to experience my inner state regardless of what's going on, if it's just always just doing that, then it's stupid and insane to continuously live out fear when I can choose to embody love states instead to the max without this fear coming in. And like once you start to make the connection that a lot of the fear is stemming from your fear of God, which a lot of people are like, well, why should I fear God? And it's like, you already do. So it's like, pretending like you don't, once you really start making the connection that fear is resulting in your belief in maybe being cast away by God or being separate from God, like, oh, you'll go to hell someday in the future. Heaven and hell is like a right now thing, so it's like, it's you start working on your relationship with God and connecting with that identity. Because that's the other end of it. So much of our of this inner getting reflected out is reflecting our identity, and you can have your identity based in fear and separation, which is what we get taught in the old man, or you can have your identity be in Christ, which is the new man. And so the more you start to embody that new state, and with that embodying the fruits of the Spirit, love, joy, peace, and just for a taste of it, those are fruits of the Spirit. And so that's the more that you're in the Spirit, the more that you embody those without limitation. You just imagine how you would feel without limitation and feeling joy. Right now, that's when you feel it, and it's not tomorrow when you feel joy or peace or forgiveness, for what you're seeing in others, because so much of that is reflections of states within you as well. And so as you forgive others, the same as when you put boundaries with others, you're doing it to yourself, and self-respect, all these types of things, it helps you to really embody these more and more, so and just start enjoying your life and not being hung up on the that's the existential threat of like, oh, the new world order's coming. It's like, look around, bro. It's already a thing. It's been going on. It's been going on since Jesus walked the earth. It's like it's the nature of this realm of the shadow world. But once you start to realize how creation is actually kind of working, you start to realize there is no like victims. It's like people are doing it to themselves through their inner conversations, partly unconsciously, but once you become aware that you can consciously do different, well, that's the start of your new life. Instead of just being a victim to your own inner conversations and your programming and propaganda, from your culture, or just programming from childhood, from your parents. Not to look at your parents like they did something sinister. Everybody's doing the best they can, and more than likely they had it worse than you did. And so, forgiving that and kind of not holding these grudges or anything, but, embodying, the feeling now, not tomorrow, not later today, but actively embodying that state now, because you're always embodying states. And so the more that you're feeling maybe your mental diet with fear and and that's really kind of promoting the illusion of separation, don't be surprised that a lot of that is coming from within anyway. And so you're either digging, and defining that more. You can always just walk away from it though, which is the craziest part, is like, once you realize that you are experiencing the past over and over and over and over again, you can start to revise the past to create a new story if you wanted to do that. Neville Goddard's techniques, we call that revision. But, also, it comes down to looking at a lot of like the instruction that's in the Bible as being able to provide you with a perfect reflection, of consciousness. So an example of that is like, maybe you stubbed your toe, or you just had this like, you probably could consider a neutral thing, like, I dropped my phone, I cracked the screen. You might be able, to judge that. I've done that many times. It's like, fuck, you get pissed because it's like, I had to buy a new phone. My phone might not function in a way that I need it to. I didn't really plan for that to happen. And you could start feeling like a victim, like, oh, did God just do that to punish me? Did something just happen? And you start telling yourself these stories of like, oh, boo-hoo, this old bad things always happen to me, and this is just my luck, and start spinning around in these stories that you start telling yourself about just this event that maybe took 5 seconds, and you might spin out in your mind for 5 hours about it. Or you could start telling yourself, well, everything happens for the good. This has happened to maybe get a better phone. And you start telling yourself a different story, and that was like a biblical example where it's like all things work for the good of those that love God. So it's like, where in the past you might be experiencing and start spinning down the drain in this, telling yourself these victim stories, these fear stories, these powerless, oh, you're some powerless little peon type thing, you're just a slave, and whatever you're telling yourself, you can start telling yourself totally different things, is the point. You don't have to say that, because that's not true, for one. That's not who you are. So once you start putting on who you actually are, which is a child of God, for one, but like, what does that mean? It's like, it's like, well, I know I'm not fear, so I must be love. So what does that mean? Your soul is wanting to feel these things and then experience the reflection as it manifests in God's perfect ways. It's just like, it's mysterious. I couldn't have envisioned this, but it played out perfectly to fully express the feeling. And I've done that so many times, just to a point where it's just like, it feels like normal, to like, oh, I got something happen. I'm not going to spin out about it. I'm going to embody this feeling of whatever, maybe success. What does that mean? What does a successful person look like? Somebody that gets up and does what they want. Is that success, or is it somebody who makes a lot of money? Is that success, or is it somebody that has a lot of power and influence over others? Is that, you look within is like, well, success is a feeling. It's a person. It's a caricature. It's something you can wear. So it's like, put on what you feel like success is. And then don't be surprised when some sort of business deal just came out of nowhere, or some opportunity just started to manifest. And then as you embody that state more and more, it's like, what does success feel like? I don't know. It feels like being a boss. What does being a boss feel like? And then don't be surprised as you're wearing that identity, embodying the feeling of being that, to then start having situations where maybe, people start to hire you to do things, or then all of a sudden you are a boss. You're making business. This is, it's weird, but it's like you embody the state first, and it's backwards from what the world teaches, where it's like, oh, well, you feel success once you hit all these milestones. And as somebody who's hit a bunch of milestones, like, that doesn't bring success. That just is a hamster wheel that you keep spinning on, of an insanity loop of like, oh, well, maybe next time, then I'll feel like I made it. It's like, what does it feel like to make it? What does that mean? That you're on the cover of Rolling Stone. It's like, even if you were on the cover of Rolling Stone, you'd probably go, oh, well, maybe if I was on the cover and then had a big spread, then I'd feel like I made it. It's like, you just feel like it's like, just, it's empty. Then that's part of what the shadow world offers, is a bunch of like, oh, you built it up in your mind, like, this is what it's going to be like. Everybody's going to love you and like respect you if this happens. And then it happens, and it's like nothing changes, and it's like, then the mind says, oh, well, I just need more. Then I'll feel like I made it. Then I feel like I'm a boss, or whatever. But what is it that you actually want to feel from making it? You want to feel like you're loved by people. You want to feel like you're better than. You got to really look within and ask yourself, what am I trying to feel from this? And once you have identified that, then feel that way now. It's like, it's not coming tomorrow. It's always happening now. And so the more that you're able to feel and embody, the new you, whatever that looks like for you, most of, I think, for me at least, it looks like, not just drifting unconsciously in patterns of reactivity and fear, but, more on patterns of choosing how I feel like feeling right now, regardless of what the media narrative is. It's like, it doesn't matter to me. The media narrative is what it is. It's not real. It's narratives and propaganda, and obviously not true, because there's two competing paradigms of reality going on simultaneously. One of them, just by logic, would not be real, but more logical is neither one of them are real. Most of it's like trying to find out which one's the heel and which one's the what do they call that in wrestling? The one's the heel, which is like the villain, while the other one's like the face, or whatever. He's like the hero. But it's all make believe. It's all narratives and such basic black and white. Well, if it's not this, then it just has to be wrong. It's like you have no idea how many variations and so many subtleties and everything that's involved in a statement like that. But it's just part of like the information entertainment. And a lot of times it just triggers people into and a lot of times it's a reflection too of what people are already feeling. It's like, well, if you got Fox News, and this is in the United States as an example, being reflective of right-wing ideals, and it's a spectrum, where you have others, that are just really more obviously right-wing, but it's, CNN and liberal media is the same way, where it's just like, but it's on the other end of the spectrum. and the false binary is both these, things are in conflict, and so, just taking yourself out of that equation, and you start looking around your city, your town, your area, the 10 miles you spend most of your life in looking at, is this accurately reflecting what I'm experiencing in my day-to-day world? Or is this just mental masturbation and just theory land? Oh, if this was this way, then it'd be a utopia. And if everybody did this on God, it's like everybody's not going to do that. So having the idea of like 100% compliance on anything, and without 100% compliance, then there's no utopia. It's like, then it's like, you got to be the change. If people aren't willing to be the change, they're going to embody lower states of consciousness. You can forgive them for that, but a lot of times, people, worry about yourself. Just stop worrying about what other people are doing. You be the change. It's like, it doesn't matter because you're connected to everybody that you're, having these experiences with. And those experiences and the whole thing will change as you change yourself. It's crazy. I've seen it happen. Where it's like, embodying a very fearful state, maybe paranoia or something like that. You start looking at others through this lens of like, almost like, it feels like, they're all possessed. Oh, it's like, oh, that person's just echoing my fears, and then it's not just that person, but then it's like the other person at the grocery store that it wasn't even around, they echoed the same fear. And it's like, because we're all connected. And if you're living in fear, if you're embodying states of fear, don't be surprised when that starts to echo out in all these other different areas. But the same thing's also true. The more that you are able to operate in a space of love, which is the absence of fear, in my opinion. It's just, it's like, you can't be in, it's either or. But at the same time, it's like, it's just one energy. So it's like how you're using it, and how you're, it's different. And it's hard to put into words until once you start practicing, it's so much easier to use your own language. It's like, because you're speaking through experience, not, well, somebody in a book said this and this and this, and it's like learning guitar. It's like, oh, I listen to music theory, but I've never actually put my fingers on a fretboard. So it's like, well, we're just going to be a gigantic disconnect then, because we're talking about manifesting. You want to learn how to play the guitar. You aren't going to learn how to play it just by listening to people and never actually doing it. You learn through doing, and that might be learned through doing so that you don't do. It's like, what does that mean? It's like, well, once you start realizing how through connecting with the quantum field, or God, consciousness, love, it's all connected, and there's a different correlation between these things. If you have beliefs where it's like, oh, I gotta physically do to create things, you're not really relying on God to do it. You're relying on your own, which is part of like the old way of thinking about things. But in that process of going from, oh, I got to do to I'm just going to trust God to provide the connections, the people, the circumstances, events. I still, when I get phone calls, I still have to go there. But like right now, I have my guy, he's out working. My wife's at her job, and it's like, I'm just kind of maybe just take I don't know, it's noon. I trust my guy to get the job going. I trust his skills at this point, and so it's a lot less of I gotta do. But there was a progression. There's a series of letting go of these different limiting beliefs of like, oh, do I trust people, and to get to that, so it's all part of this journey, the destination and the journey being one and the same. But with that, you can, go from having a business, and this is just what I'm doing, and so it's like you can have a business and you can just be in fear, through the start of it, of like, oh, is this going to work? Am I going to be able to support myself? Am I going to pay my bills and take care of my family? To the next thing of like, oh, well, I'm getting, am I going to be able to fulfill these jobs? Am I going to start getting customers that are angry at me? If I, to, oh, if I got to hire some help, am I going to get, the what ifs and the fear, if you're not actively embodying the state of like peace now, you're just gonna be banging your head, and at the same time, there's a totally different way to do it. If you just trust that God provides, and have that kind of belief that starts to become strengthened through the doing, then it becomes like, oh well, I don't really have to do much other than just be myself in these situations, and they'll happen in perfect timing. I don't have to worry about it. That's the thing. It's like I just need to trust that it's already accomplished. It's like who I want to be from having this is already a done deal. It's like I don't got to have these external validations and these external markers to feel however I feel like feeling, and neither do you. I mean, ultimately, you can feel like you've made it. You can feel like you're in heaven right now. That's a good space to be in. Would you tolerate this in your eternal life? Feeling these certain feelings, or would it feel like you're in hell? I mean, start shifting into creating a heaven state of consciousness now on earth through your life. Let your life be a demonstration of what your faith is. Don't just talk. Talk is easy, but actively being the one that's doing it inspires others. And just speaking and telling people what to do doesn't mean shit, really. You watch people how they live, and it's like, oh man, that person seems really like I would like to be at that level, and not to look at the levels as like some envious thing, because there is definitely levels, to different, states of consciousness, but not to sit there and be jealous and envious, but, to look at it as like, oh, if God did that for that person, God would do the same thing for me. And the only thing preventing me from realizing this, just the way the other person did, is maybe a little bit limiting belief of not feeling worthy. You start to shake them things out as you embody. How would you feel if you were on the same level as that person? What do you think they have that you don't have, and put on that state. And don't sit there and start and this has to do too with your mental diet. Start filling your mind and your consciousness with the promises of God. With love, with success stories, other people that are also doing, believing the promises of God, obeying like the laws of consciousness on some level, and listening to their success stories. Faith comes by hearing, so that's one of the reasons I share these. Because I don't feel like I'm involved in the beast system at all. The only time I even feel that way is when I get on the internet, which is becoming, if I'm filling my mind with beneficial information, and the same things I'm saying for you guys to do. You stay out of the conspiracy rabbit holes, because a lot of those are so low vibe, fear porn things, really. Because once you realize that there is no they, that God's in control, there's nothing for you to fear from the they, because they're only doing the shit to themselves. Yeah, you might be able to look and see, oh well, this person is fill in the blank. I'm going to judge them as evil, or being unconscious. Most people are when you really start, and most people aren't aware of what they're doing. But but maybe there are, and it's like, well, for one, you could pray for that person like Jesus would say to do, because that is also existing within you. Everything is part of you too. So it's like there is no them, in that way. Where it's like, with some of these conspiracy things, where it's just like so much of them is building up the they, and empowering the they, and then obeying the they. So it's like it becomes pointless to do that. It's like, why are you building the fear, strengthening the spell? Other than some people like that drama, and it's addictive. It's habit forming to be in that kind of, oh, look what they're doing next, and this is unfolding. It's like, yeah, why? Because it's reflecting what you're feeling. A lot of your fears are coming true. A lot of what you are creating, a lot of this shit that doesn't actually even exist outside of your own thoughts about it. the story that you've told about it. But like you start to realize that as you change your beliefs. Some of the, like, maybe like the unhelpful beliefs is like, oh, everybody's where they're at in the world because they serve Satan. It's like, okay, well, how about you change that belief to everybody is where they're at in the world because it's part of creation and that's part of God's plan why that's happening. Stop putting Satan above God. A lot of the truther shit is like that, where it's like, oh, well, these people, the synagogue of Satan people, are up here or up here, and the rest. It's like, no, it's reversed. They're only doing it to themselves, for one, and if you feel enslaved by that, you are the one building that prison. You don't have to feel like that. Why do you feel like that anyway? Oh, because you've seen something through a screen, or maybe you experienced some shit. Who knows? But start letting that shit go. You are a sovereign being. That God created to live a life, not to be a slave to somebody else, or even basically a slave to your own illusions of the stories that you tell yourself. I was listening to a guy one time. He was saying something about like illness, and it was like maybe potentially triggering, but like the thing of it was, he was like, well, if you're triggered by me saying something about your illness, I think he was like saying how there was an illusion or something like that, and he was like, I could see how like maybe some like crippled person or something like that would be like, well, what are you saying? And it's like, well, by you being offended and almost defending your illness, you have made an identity around it, which is actually strengthening it and prolonging it. And so it's like, if you're triggered by like, something about the they, you have built your own identity around the they to define yourself, which is also strengthening the they and prolonging that experience in your life. So it's like, start dropping the they, start following maybe what Jesus was saying to do and applying that to the they, and watch how these problems start to melt away. And that's something only you can do. Only you can do that. It's like, I'm doing it, but as far as like convincing others, I mean, walk your own path, but ultimately go within, ask God to help you sort it out. But that's just something I wanted to bring to you guys' attention today, is the feeling, especially because you only are ever doing that now. And so it's like, put on that shit now and practice that. Spend your present moment trying to feel as good as possible, instead of just like, oh, well, what's the they doing? Oh, we got mandates. Oh, we got this coming. Oh, we got that. It's like, living God's creation. It's like, respect and there's societal order of things, which, most of the time you go out and most of that shit is an illusion. Most people, when you go out into your town or your city and everything, 99% of the time it was peaceful. There's not chaos running around. Most people are civil on some level. But a lot of it has to, we got this story going on then too. And we have people waking up from the dream of separation. And so looking at things as exciting and like, things are going to change for the better. Instead of this constant looming, oh, what's the they's going to take over? It's like, look around. It's already been took over. It's like the new world is the old world. It's like it's backwards and inverted. It's like there's a new heaven and new earth that you're experiencing now as you embody that now. It's like, stop worshiping people. Stop making governments your God, and you won't be a slave. Stop putting the external, whatever these external powers and principalities above God, and you won't be feeling like you're worshiping or obeying evil. It's like focus on the kingdom of God and manifesting that by embodying it the best that you can at this particular moment, and by feeling that reality into being. As you feel embodying that to be true, self will always reflect that in your life in God's timing. It's always doing it, so it's like, you can choose to unconsciously just drift into fear, which then spins out, into the undesirable, or you can just choose not to. I mean, it's that simple. But I just wanted to bring that to you guys' attention and awareness, and put it on, try it out, And if you got any of these blocks, it's as easy as start telling yourself, I don't want to create that anymore in myself, in my mind. I'm going to choose to let that go and think better things. Maybe you start to do that and start to feel good. And maybe you start feeling guilty, like you're doing something shameful or sinful or some like something that God's going to punish you for. It's like, oh, well, that's just guilt. That's guilt coming in. I'm not guilt. I am innocent, and I'm going to stop creating guilt in my mind. Because as you do that, a lot of the punishing, vengeful, things that are going on in your own life, a lot of those will start to dissolve as you start to embody being guiltless, being innocent, being one with God, being being whatever label, we're just naming things. I mean, it's like, Jesus lives within you, so you start connecting with that identity, of like the resurrected Christ within you. All it's all about an identity. It's all about who you think you yourself to be, and with that, evolving that more and more so to, today maybe you spent half the day peaceful, the other half triggered and in fear. Well, that's your starting spot, but there's no limit to how much love you can feel. There's no limit to how much joy you can feel. There's no limit to bliss. All the fruits of the Spirit are exponential. And so the more that you're able to embody those states now, instead of embodying states of fear now, that's the only thing that's happening. It's always happening in the present moment. And so I just wanted to remind you guys that, and remind myself that, to not get carried away with different things, and to embody more, feeling states. Ask yourself, go within, ask God, hey, what should I feel right now? Can I feel it to the max right now that I can do? And then just embody that then. It's like, how would you feel if you were in heaven? You had no problems. You had no, how did that make you feel? You didn't have the they to be battling against. You didn't have to be fighting yourself and punishing yourself all the time, hurting yourself all the time. Once you make the choice that I'm not going to hurt myself anymore, a lot of times you get these fear and guilt things going on when you start feeling good. It's like, I'm tired of creating. I'm tired of reacting to that. For one, I'm tired for creating that. And all of it depends on how much you believe the promises of God to be true. Is what it boils down to. Because you can feel guilty, or you could feel like Jesus died for your sins. There's no condemnation of those that are in Christ, and actually believe the things that are biblically in there already, and it'll bring you more and more, peace and joy, and be able to really embody these things as you just believe it, but you got to be the one that believes it. So with that being said, I think I'm going to bounce. Thanks for liking, sharing, subscribing. I appreciate you guys' financial support too. I definitely put that to good use, put that in the current of things, just shuffling that around for the benefit of my family and others and myself, and all that kind of stuff. And so other than that, have a good rest of your now, and God bless.